There's something inside you. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, but it moves everything. It decides what you fear, what you chase, what you deny. It's not your dreams, not your values, not even your conscience. It's the parts of you you've exiled, the anger you weren't allowed to feel, the envy you were taught to shame, the hunger you've buried beneath self-control. It's every emotion you silenced, every impulse you labeled wrong, every truth you tucked away just to be accepted. Carl Jung called this hidden reservoir the shadow. And here's the haunting part. It doesn't need your permission. It's already shaping your life. In your judgments, in your reactions, in the roles you play without even realizing it. The more you reject it, the louder it speaks, through conflict, through pain, through the faces of those you cannot stand. This is not about what's wrong with you. It's about what you've forgotten. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's the map back to your wholeness, but only if you dare to look. Welcome to the place where self-honesty begins. Welcome to the part of you that's been waiting to be seen. The more you bury what's inside, the more the outside world begins to speak for you. Not with words, but through irritation, conflict, resentment, confusion. You think you're upset because someone is arrogant, but if you listen closely, you'll hear your own repressed desire to be seen, to take up space, to matter. You criticize the selfish, but maybe it's not selfishness you hate. Maybe it's that you've spent your life denying your own needs, trying to earn love by disappearing. You say they talk too much, feel too much, want too much, but maybe they're just living the parts of you that you never gave yourself permission to be. This is projection, not a flaw, not a failure, but a message. When your unconscious is silenced, it doesn't vanish, it projects. It paints your wounds onto the world so you can finally see them. And the people you find most difficult, they're not accidents, they are mirrors. Each one reflecting back a fragment of what you've tried to exile from yourself. That sharp irritation you feel, the one you can't quite explain. That's not about them. It's your shadow knocking. And if you don't pause to listen, you'll keep blaming others for emotions that were always your own. You'll fight battles that aren't real, break connections that never needed to end. You'll waste years trying to escape people who were only ever showing you. We spend so much energy trying to clean the mirror, not realizing the distortion is coming from within. But here's the shift. What if your triggers aren't threats? What if they're teachers? What if every judgment wasn't proof of your righteousness, but an invitation to heal something inside? You don't need to like every part of yourself, but you do need to meet them. Because the longer you avoid your reflection, the more life will twist itself into painful ways to show it to you. And that's not cruelty, that's consciousness, trying to come home. So what happens when you refuse to look? When you silence the voice, turn away from the mirror and convince yourself that part of me doesn't exist. It doesn't die. It waits. It festers in silence. It seeps into your thoughts, your choices, your tone of voice when you speak without knowing why you're angry. You stop being honest and start being nice. But it's not kindness. It's a mask, a performance. You smile while resentment grows behind your eyes. You help others, but feel quietly enraged when they don't return the favor. You say you're above it all, but deep down, you ache with jealousy of those who live freely because you've caged your own desire. And in this slow, unconscious betrayal of the self, something tragic happens. You don't just lose touch with who you are. You become what you hate. The very arrogance you criticize, you begin to wear it in your judgments. The control you resist in others, you impose it silently, through guilt, through silence, through withdrawal. Not because you're broken, not because you're bad, but because the shadow always finds a way to survive. What you repress returns through the back door wearing your face. Carl Jung said, "What you do not make conscious will appear in your life as fate." And he was right. Ignore your shadow and you hand it the steering wheel. Not all at once, but gradually, subtly, until you wake up one day and you're no longer sure whether the life you're living is really yours. You wonder why you feel so empty, but it's because the parts of you that carry vitality were labeled unacceptable and locked away. You wonder why you feel stuck, but it's because you're still trying to win a game you never wanted to play, following rules you never truly believed in. And the cost of that denial? Your aliveness, your authenticity, your peace. Every time you say, "This isn't me," when it is. Every time you deny your anger, shrink your ambition, disown your sadness, you sign another silent agreement to let your unconscious run the show, to be haunted by the very feelings you pretend not to feel. And eventually, you won't need to pretend, because you'll become what you buried. And the scariest part is, you may not even realize it. But there's still a choice. There's still a door, not to erase the shadow, but to face it, to meet it with awareness, to understand that your darkness is not your enemy. It's your invitation, because the longer you run, the more your life becomes a performance. But the moment you stop, the moment you turn inward and simply say, "Yes, I see you," that's the moment the shadow begins to soften. That's when your healing begins. But there is another way. Not the path of denial, not the endless escape, but the path of return, of turning inward, not to fight yourself, but to finally listen. This is not about becoming better. It's not about fixing who you are. Integration is not self-improvement, it's self-confrontation. It is meeting the parts of yourself you buried in silence. It is stepping into the emotional basement where all the things you were taught to hide still live, waiting to be seen. The first step is recognition. You have to admit what exists: the anger you swallowed, the envy you disowned, the pride you dressed in false humility, but also the gifts you silenced, the raw passion, the daring, the wildness, the beauty you were told was too much. These aren't mistakes, they're fragments of your soul. And you cannot become whole by amputating the truth of who you are. The second step is observation, not judgment, not analysis, just awareness. Notice where your reactions spike, where you shrink, where you explode, where you find yourself hating someone without knowing why. That's the shadow speaking. It never hides in neutrality, it hides in the extremes. And if you pay attention, you'll begin to see the pattern. The triggers aren't accidents, they are openings, clues left behind by the unconscious to show you where your healing lives. The third step is compassionate acceptance. This is the hardest part, because it means letting go of the image you've been trying to protect. It means saying, "Yes, I feel this. Yes, this lives in me. And I won't turn away anymore." Acceptance doesn't mean you act on every impulse. It doesn't mean you justify your pain. It means you stop pretending that you are one-dimensional, that you are only light. Because you are not. You are contradiction. You are chaos and calm, fear and brilliance, strength and softness. And in that complexity, there is freedom. Real power doesn't come from control. It comes from inner clarity, from seeing yourself fully and no longer needing to hide. And sometimes you won't be able to do it alone. Sometimes you'll need someone to hold the mirror steady when your hands are shaking. A therapist, a guide, a friend who listens without trying to fix you. Because integration is not a solo conquest. It is a sacred unfolding, and it asks for honesty, support, and time. But once you begin, once you make the choice to stop running, you'll feel something shift. And it won't be dramatic. It'll be subtle, like silence after years of noise. And in that silence, you'll hear yourself again. The real you. The whole you. The one you buried to survive and are now ready to welcome home. Something changes the moment you stop running. Not loud, not sudden, but unmistakable. When you integrate the shadow, you no longer need the world to carry the weight of your wounds. You stop looking for enemies in other people because you've stopped denying the war inside yourself. You stop overreacting because you've learned to listen. You see others more clearly, not as threats, not as projections, but as human. Flawed, like you. Wounded, like you. Worthy, like you. And in that shift, you begin to breathe differently. Not faster, deeper. Your ego gets quieter, not gone, but no longer desperate for validation. You don't need to be seen as perfect because you're no longer ashamed of being whole. Your presence changes. It holds weight, but not the kind that drains, the kind that grounds, the kind that makes others feel like they can stop pretending too. You stop explaining yourself. You stop apologizing for existing. You don't seek applause. You don't chase approval. Because you've met the parts of yourself you once tried to exile. The angry child, the bitter dreamer, the jealous lover, the part of you that always wanted more but was told to settle. You sat with them. You listened. You didn't fix them. You loved them. And now, you don't walk alone. You walk with all of them. All the selves you once abandoned. That's what transformation really means. Not becoming someone else, but finally becoming yourself. His isn't a finish line. It's not a destination where you finally arrive and everything stays clean, clear, and resolved. No, this is a rhythm, a quiet spiral of becoming, a cycle of death and rebirth that unfolds inside you again and again. Because even as you heal, the unconscious doesn't stop growing. New shadows form, old ones return in new disguises. Life keeps revealing more of what you've yet to meet within, and so the work continues. Not in a frantic chase toward enlightenment, but in a steady commitment to stay awake, to notice the subtle ways you hide, to catch the moment you project, to feel the shift when old pain reemerges in the shape of a new reaction. Integration is not a single event, it's a way of seeing, a way of being. Not perfection, but presence. It's choosing to stay in relationship with every part of yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it would be easier to fall back asleep. And some days, you won't have the strength. You'll forget, you'll resist, you'll slip back into old roles and patterns. That's okay, because the journey is not about getting it right. It's about returning again and again, with honesty, with humility, with courage. And yes, sometimes you'll need help, a guide, a witness, not someone to fix you, but someone who sees you, who holds the mirror steady when your own reflection feels too heavy to face. Because we weren't meant to walk this path alone, and we don't have to. The shadow will visit you many times in this life, but every time you face it, every time you welcome it in, you reclaim more of yourself. Not by escaping the darkness, but by learning how to carry the light within it. You've spent years trying to be good, to be accepted, to be what the world told you was enough. But the shadow doesn't care about appearances. It doesn't respond to perfection. It waits for your truth. And maybe that's why you're here, not by accident, but because something in you is done pretending, because the noise within has grown too loud to ignore. This is the path back to yourself, not through denial, but through courageous honesty. Not by fixing who you are, but by reclaiming what you've abandoned. You will become what you hate if you never face what you are. But if you choose to see, to listen, to integrate, you will become something far deeper. Not perfect, but real. Not pure, but whole. And that wholeness, it changes everything. If this voice stirred something in you, Don't let it fade. Stay with it, subscribe, reflect, and begin. This is not the end. It's the beginning of who you were always meant to be.